Folks, me and my friends are going to put on a little Wild West here for you. Some of you may have heard of it. It's called a Hold Up. I'm Chris Spivey.
And I'm Eddy Webb.
And today we're here to talk about Red Sun, 1971. Good day, listeners. I am in a quandary, as always, when we start these things. Eddy, have you seen or had you heard of this movie before I presented it to you?
I love how you always ask me this question as if you're going to give a different answer each time.
I live in hope.
I mean, I thought it was pretty clear at the start of this. No, I've never seen. I think I may have heard of it in the sense of I knew vaguely that there was a cowboy meets samurai film in existence, but no, I was largely unaware of this movie.
So, all right, where to even start with this? This is, some people think this is the first East meets West movie. If not the first, it is one of the most predominant ones of the time period, which sort of takes Asian culture and Western culture and sort of fuses them and knocks them together.
Right.
And this is probably one of the most high profile versions of that, especially around the 70s.
Right. I mean, because it's one of those things that's kind of a bit of a meme at this point in time, where, people often point out that it is entirely historically accurate to have cowboy, samurai, and pirates in the same story. And this is kind of an illustration of that point. But also, I find it specifically interesting it's a 71 film because we are now deep in the weeds of, it is very explicit that Westerns inspired samurai films, which then inspired Westerns again. And so now we have this whole thing kind of full circle to the point where Toshiro Mifune is in it, who was one of the most well-known actors from all of the Kurosawa samurai films. So there's very clearly an intentional connection between specifically Akira Kurosawa films and Westerns.
Yeah, because he was, I think, in the Seven Samurai.
Yes, he started in Seven Samurai, and then I think at least all the 5 Kurosawa samurai films that I have, that he has starred in all of them. So he's a common actor that Kurosawa went back to regularly.
Well, just to point out how much these movies are particularly intertwined for genre perspective, Bronson was also in The Magnificent Seven.
Ah, okay. Nice.
But Bronson was not, I think, the first choice they really wanted, though. Do you know who they really, really wanted?
Is this another case where Clint Eastwood was the person they wanted and they settled for Charles Bronson instead?
Yeah.
Charles Bronson's career is, you could have been Clint Eastwood.
I don't know if Eastwood turned it down or if he was necessarily approached with a reasonable offer, but I know they originally wanted Clint Eastwood was like their go-to, but instead they got Bronson.
On the one hand, I feel like Clint Eastwood would be a terrible choice, right? I think Bronson's twinkle is very important for how this movie plays out. But I could totally see on paper the icon of Western films in the 70s and the icon of samurai films in the 70s both being in the same film. I could see why that specifically would be a very attractive prospect.
Yeah, and regardless of how I will discuss this film shortly, the charisma between the two leads is utterly important and fantastic the entire time. Regardless of anything else I'm going to say, that makes whatever part of this movie works. It's magic.
No, totally. I mean, I'll play my cards a bit early and say that easily 80% of my enjoyment of this film comes from just watching those two together, which for the concept of this film is necessary. If you don't get that right, nothing else in the film works. And regardless of how much the rest of the film works, that part certainly works. And again, the way that they spark off each other, I just don't think Clint Eastwood would bring the same dynamic to it. They would both be stoic characters, and that doesn't work, right?
I'd almost think late 60s, early 70s Clint Eastwood would not have been able to have shared the screen as equals, I think is what it boils down to.
Right.
He would have wanted to
Yeah.
be the leading man.
Right. The other thing is interesting is uh because of what we've seen. So one piece that I'm bringing specifically to this is that I'm in the process of rewatching Seven Samurai. I'm it's a 3-hour movie and I'm watching it in small chunks. But like I said before, I've picked up a nice Blu-ray collection of samurai films from Kurosawa and something I just want to watch for my own enjoyment. Certainly, this run has helped inspired me to go pick it up because I want to see the connections, but also I have not seen them in decades and I know I enjoy them, so I want to watch them. Um, but in Seven Samurai, Mifune is playing a character that is very similar to what Bronson is playing here. Is a kind of a slapstick guy who's a trickster who um, talks a lot of shit and tries to get away with stuff. Um, and because we have seen the other movie with Bronson, where he is playing something that is similar to a Clint Eastwood style stoic character with harmonica, it's interesting. Both of them have played some version of both of these roles in the movie, and so through the course of it, you do see each of them bring. It's not just two archetypes, right? They're like there's a bit of sparkle in Mifune's playing of the stoic character. You see there's a bit of humor in that role as he's playing it, and Bronson's bringing a bit of stoic steel to his very not goofy character, but like very very charming tricksterish character. So like neither of them are playing just the archetype; they're playing a bit of the other side too. And it's been interesting because I just again fairly recently have seen both of them play both sides of this role. So it was wild to kind of just see them together and see what they do with it. It's a good confluence of moments for me.
Awesome, because a rewatch of the Seven Samurai is something I want to do. I have not seen it in decades, but it is not in my immediate to watch queue.
Right. I have if anyone else for you, but also anyone else listening, I picked up the BFI Samurai Collection. They did a nice 4K remastering of all of the original films, and it has all of the obvious ones like Seven Samurai, Throne of Blood, but it has a couple of his slightly lesser known ones. It has actually, I have it right here. Hang on. Seven Samurai, Throne of Blood, Yojimbo, obviously, but also Hidden Fortress and Senjuro are the other two. And also tons and tons of special features and whatnot. And the BFI releases tend to be, they're kind of the British equivalent of the Criterion Collection, in my experience. So they have a
Very
lot
cool.
of well-researched stuff, and the commentary tracks are usually from academics talking about the film. So yeah, a lot of good stuff.
Do you do you know the James Bond connection in this film?
No, I certainly felt subconsciously that there was a bit of a James Bond vibe to it, but also a bit of a Wild Wild West vibe. But I couldn't put my finger on it.
Well, I guess we'll start with the most obvious one. There's Ursula Andrews, who's
Oh, sure, okay, fair.
stunning, like the whole time, just
Yeah,
stunning. Wow.
yeah.
That's like the most obvious apparent one. But there's also Terrence Young was the director, and Terrence Young directed the first 1 and 2 and 4 of the Bond movies, like Doctor No, From Russia
Right.
with
Okay.
Love, and Thunderball.
2 out of 3 ain't bad.
You just missed the most important one. That's all,
Right. Yeah. Details. Didn't Terrence Young? I think we talked before during James Bond, but I think Terrence Young also directed some Doctor Who too, in the middle of all that.
That I don't remember. Could be. Was it your Doctor Who movies that you're talking about that I've seen once when I was like a little kid that I
I think
refused to
so.
watch
Yes.
again?
Yes. There's a
Yeah.
Blu-ray release of those 2 movies too, by the way. So
in a deeper cut for all the Bond fans is that the bandit that they send back to Gouch to talk to him was also in the Bond films.
Oh wow, I've never seen that.
I know this because I read it somewhere because I was doing a little research. He was a doctor that had to kill Bond with a spider.
Uh-huh.
And he was also Blofeld in those first movies when we sort of see like the back of it, a chair and a hand. He
Oh,
played.
right. Yes. Okay. Yeah.
So yeah, like it's like Terrence Young brought some of his Bond crew here to make a West movie.
Speaking of Bond stuff, wasn't Ursula Andress dubbed in the Bond film?
She was.
Was she dubbed in this movie too?
I don't think so.
Okay. Because now that you said it, I was like, oh, right, I have seen her. And I was like, the reason why I didn't mention it, her voice sounded different. Like, oh, that's right, because she was dubbed in the Bond film. There's no way to think that if she was dubbed again, she would be dubbed by the same actress. So I didn't know if that was actually her real voice or she was dubbed again.
I think this is far enough along that she learned to learn the language. I think is the best way to put it. Because I know that eventually, because I think she's also in the spoof James Bond movie with Woody Allen, and I think she's also using her own voice in that movie.
Oh, okay. All right. Casino Royale?
Which should have been before this, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, yeah. No, Casino Royale was like 67, 68-ish. It was a few years after the first Bond movie.
Well, because this was also, I think, started filming or production around late 68.
Okay.
So it came out in 71, and then it came out in 72 in the US. It was like
right. So it's in a weird way, it's funny because like technically we have seen two movies in the 70s, but also technically neither movie really belonged in the 70s. Technically late 60s movies.
Well, yeah. So but at the same time, this is the most international film because it was, where's that? A French, Italian, Spanish spaghetti Western. And
wow.
And I'm calling it a spaghetti Western because it's classified as a spaghetti Western.
Right.
It doesn't feel like a spaghetti Western to me when I watch it. Some of the blood scenes do, but it's very minimal compared to the other things that we've seen for spaghetti Westerns.
No, it weirdly, honestly feels closer to aside from a couple scenes of nudity and violence, it does feel a lot more like a classic Ford film, in a lot of regards. The way the music is played, the way that it's shot, the way that it's edited together, it feels more like it's from a Ford film from the late 50s, early 60s than a spaghetti Western.
Yeah, like the cinematography is stunning.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It feels like, and maybe now that you told me it's a spaghetti Western, I'm wondering if some of it is the European Western filmmakers were starting to get more cachet and therefore more money, but it was nowhere at the same level of an American blockbuster. So I think it feels in some ways like we can do a blockbuster-like movie on a lower budget. And their attempt to kind of shoot for that. Because again, it's traditional is not quite the right word because a lot of things that aren't traditional, but it feels more traditional than the last few movies we've seen.
Yeah, well, come on. Anything feels more traditional than El Topo.
Topo. Okay, fair.
But
also
a mind-boggling experience.
But to the point where I'm genuinely surprised to find this is a spaghetti Western in terms of production side.
You made an app for me to help with
that.
Devices.
Apparently, phone has opinions.
I don't think it liked El Topo is what it's telling me.
I mean, to be fair, who does? But no, so like it feels the most American out of the last 3 or 4 movies we've seen. Again, El Topo's separate thing. So a little bit of a surprise, but I think it speaks to what we've said before, which is that the back and forth of inspiration, right, is like you have these European and to a degree Japanese filmmakers who are inspired by American films trying to make the films feel as American as possible. And sometimes they're adding their own into the mix to it. And now they have refined their mix to the point where it does fit a little more seamlessly into that mold while still keeping their own distinctiveness inside of it.
Yeah. Which added to, though, this is probably the most international Western I think we've seen.
Yeah.
And I'm using that specifically to say that the 4 leads, and I'm calling them all leads, are like American, Japanese, French, and Swiss from Global Effect. And that's just like the primary 4. That doesn't even drop down into some of the secondary cast members that are also more international and spread out.
Right.
Because primarily we've had ones where they would bring in maybe 1 or 2 people from other nations, and then everyone else would be of like sort of one demographic.
Right, and I mean, to your earlier point, Terrence Young is British too, so like yeah, it's another piece of it all too. Um, it's we're definitely at a point now where the Western is no longer purely an American phenomenon; it's now a global phenomenon. But paradoxically, it's at a point where it is probably of its lowest interest in the U.S. specifically.
Yeah, which links to the fact that I think it's hard to get exact numbers completely on this film, like really hard for the 10 minutes of Googling I did, because it was 10 minutes of Googling for everything, and I'm not going to do a deeper dive.
Right.
I care about all of you listeners, but you know what? If you want to come back with the real numbers, I appreciate it. But if not, it's okay because it's Red Sun. Supposedly they had a budget of around $6 million, give or take.
Okay.
And it was a international success. Like
Okay.
it was loved overseas, kicked butt everywhere. In the US, it was marginally successful. Like I think it made its budget back in the US, and everywhere overseas it did significantly better than in the US.
I know it was it's cliche to say this, but I know it was big in Japan, right?
Yeah. Because that's what led to Charles Bronson becoming huge in Japan for a while. And he actually did this cologne ad for a Japanese company, like a 2 to 4 day shoot, and they paid him $100,000 for it.
Jeez.
Because of this movie and his popularity after it.
That is like David Hasselhoff in Germany level of fame, right?
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
But I mean, it's funny because like I didn't know the clone ad thing, but I knew that Bronson was hot because he and a couple other people are the epicenter of the big in Japan meme, right? It's the actor that in the West people don't consider very popular turns out to be very popular. I mean, like Homer Simpson, The Simpsons, Homer was apparently big in Japan. That was kind of a joke because he was referencing actors like Bronson, who didn't find success here or as much success here, and then found way more success in Japan or in Europe.
Yeah, which is still what a lot of actors do, which is why it is fascinating sometimes to see commercials that come across to the States of actors who did these commercials like 5 or 10 years ago, made a bunch of money, and you see them and you go, why are they in that commercial? To realize how much money they probably got paid to go do that overseas.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Lucrative business.
Yes. I can't think of the actor's name. The guy who plays Terry in Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Terry Crews.
Yeah, right. Right. Duh. Okay, I forgot that was the real name. I forgot that was the joke. Yes, Terry Crews. They did a joke in Brooklyn Nine-Nine about how he did a Japanese hair commercial because obviously Terry Crews is bald, but apparently that was based on his real life experience where he briefly had a very, very popular career in Japan.
It's just like when they did the those Twin Peaks coffee commercials too.
I didn't know that.
Well, no, you don't remember like the series that we saw of Cooper.
Oh, right. I thought you meant like there were actual Japanese commercials about Twin Peaks, but no, yeah, the joke inside Twin Peaks, yes, about the coffee commercials. Right. Anyway, all that was to say, I knew that Bronson was one of the people like that because there's also a fair number of professional wrestlers who never quite had a large impact in the U.S., but became iconic in Japan. So yeah, it's fascinating to see because I think we're at that the 70s is kind of that point where multiculturalism in a media perspective starts to become financially viable.
All right, one last big fact, and we can move on into Red Sun proper. John Huston, the legendary director of like the Maltese Falcon, the Sierra Madre, and all that, considered 3 westerns to be amongst the best ever made.
Okay.
Stagecoach.
Okay.
Red River. And Red Sun.
Really?
That is a fact pull from the internet. So take it for validity that you will. But I loved it so much, I had to put it in here.
I haven't seen Red River because it's not on this list, so therefore I can't speak to that. But
Coffee did not come from my nose.
One point where you're going to get to a movie and I'm going to be like, I have seen this before, and you're going to be so shocked. And I'm not tell you which one it is, but it's interesting because you're right. Like, this isn't a movie that is, I won't say not well regarded. It's just not talked about much, right? Like, I've heard of Stagecoach. If I hadn't seen it before, I've heard of Stagecoach. I've heard of Django. I've heard of a lot of these westerns, even if I haven't seen them, because there's a certain amount of being involved in the culture that picks stuff up. I knew that Red Sun existed, but I didn't know the title of it. I didn't know Bronson was in it. I didn't know Mifune was in it. And once I started watching, I was like, oh, of course, all these things make total sense. And then it was the inevitable question of, why haven't I really heard more about this? So I don't know if that was kind of a hipster choice of like, here's this awesome western you've never heard of, or if it was genuinely there was a moment where it was popular amongst aficionados, and it kind of just is one of those things where, like, aficionados of westerns really know this film and people outside of it don't really.
I just think that most people didn't vibe with it, is the best way to put it. Although I can tell you, I debated for a while whether or not we're going to do this one or the Fighting Fist of Shanghai Joe.
I'm gonna guess that's probably a Hong Kong film.
It is. I think it's a Chinese immigrant comes to the States and essentially battles enslavers and frees some Mexican people.
I kind of want to watch that anyway, but
you never know. We might along the way. But I went with a bigger name people because I made you watch El Topo. I was like, all right, let's give Eddy something that.
I will say before we dive into it, this was exactly the right palate cleanser after El Topo. So there's that.
So that's why I chose this in the end. And plus, maybe I insulted Charles Bronson a lot last time, and so I feel a little bad about
it. We'll get there. I have thoughts about that.
All right. Harmonica. I don't know why I said that. Dorfman. That music. Opening credits. A cowboy riding into the scene and sending his horse off as a train pulls into the station. A samurai steps off the train into the west, with U.S. soldiers on one side and a shady-looking outlaw, Link Stewart, on the other. All board the train as it departs. A gaggle of sheep appear in front of the train, and all the soldiers run off of the train to deal with the sheep. Then epic gun battle starts. Pew, 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 pew.
So, one of the things I sometimes love about older media, there are two things I love about them, and they're both obviously contradictory, but it makes sense in a second, is when they accurately predict trends and feel timeless, or when they completely misunderstand how things are going to evolve. So, like, this is 71, way before Japanese media became extremely popular in the US. So they have to explain things like samurai and, Bushido and all of this stuff. And it's like all throughout this movie, there's lots of like, let me explain this Japanese concept to you. It's like, no, we know. And even like people who aren't deeply into Asian cinema or Asian media are like, well, I know what a samurai is. I get it, right? But in 71, I don't know, because like I think it's before Shogun. James Clifford writes Shogun. I think James Clifford was the 80s. I know the miniseries was the 80s.
I thought he wrote it around in the 60s. I don't know. All right, we could Google it if we really wanted to, since we've become those people now, like old men.
The point is, even if it wasn't the 60s, it still would have been early enough that I could see people going, okay, we're not entirely sure if Western audiences will know all these references, so we do have to explain them. And again, because it's set in the US, it makes sense that people are explaining this stuff. But it did lead to this hilarious scene at the start of people next to a train very obviously explaining the plot to the audience.
All right, if you want to go there. So you found the title card to be helpful.
Kind of.
Which, because I'm thinking about it as an audience member in like 1971 or 72, because I'd be in the US when I saw this. Sitting there, and part of me, if memory serves, it is vaguely, loosely, remotely, with a long stick, touching on an actual incident may have occurred in the U.S.
That was actually what I was going to ask you, is because like I read the title card and I'm like, this doesn't feel correct, but I couldn't put my finger on why and did not care enough to find out.
I think I didn't bother to look it up. I think I vaguely remember something about it from working on Haunted West, but the thing is, though, I love the title card because it did something that is incredibly important for me as a person that was trying to chronologically figure out where everything goes. Is it set it in a fucking year? You know,
Yeah,
this movie happens in Universe World 1870 or at most 1871.
right,
Ulysses Grant is president. They don't tell you Grant's president, but if you know history,
right.
Grant's president. Boom, right there. 1870 versus El Topo, that was maybe in our time frame. Maybe the Guanji, Valley of Guanji was in our time frame. Who knows?
No, that's actually a good point, because we talked about the past 4 films, I think. I'm gonna say this right now. Going forward, we just accept that El Topo is an exception to absolutely everything I'm about to say about the previous films. It's just so I have, because otherwise I'll be saying it constantly. El Topo is its own separate little bubble of bullshit. We're just gonna put it over here and never reference it for the time being. But like the past 3 or 4 films we've seen, you're right, have been playing more with the iconography of westerns than actually what's historical. Although we have pointed out that because they're done primarily from a European perspective, they either intentionally or inadvertently ended up being slightly more historically accurate than actual American westerns as a result. Um, this is the best of both worlds in some regards, which is that it does place it in a place in time that you could theoretically research, and also allows you to see a more diverse version of the West than perhaps Americans were aware of.
Yeah, infinitely more so. Although I don't remember seeing any black people in this West. I'll just leave it at
Well,
that.
there's that. There's that.
So, Eddie, if you were a bunch of soldiers and your primary objective was probably to protect the Japanese diplomat and his bodyguards, would you send all of your troops off to go deal with sheep that laid in front of the
Clearly,
train?
that's weirdly one of the things I liked about this film, because like at first I was like, this is nonsense, right? But we're not quite there yet. So just to peek ahead a little bit, the people guarding the ambassador are correctly pissed off at the American soldiers for this action, right? So it's very much they did this because the plot demanded it, which I don't like. But at least what ends up inadvertently happening is the quote unquote foreign character starts off from a position of being objectively correct in a way that the audience can understand. So it allows us to sympathize with the Japanese characters a lot more than perhaps would otherwise have happened. So I get why it is structured this way, but for about 10 minutes, I was like, are you, in fact, the dumbest soldiers that have ever existed?
So part of what I did for this synopsis, though, what I usually don't do, is I rearrange everything. So all the stuff with the soldiers is happening now, pretty much in our description, most of it.
Right, right.
And so then I can move like the theft and everything to the next piece. For instance, like get an epic gun battle, and you get Gouch. Let's go
I think it's
with
Gouch.
Gouch.
Whatever.
Gets actually literally pulls up one of the soldiers to help him and then shoots him. Utterly evil, establishing evil. So something else I want to put up front before I forget it is this week, the name I'm using is Briscoe. And Eddie laughed when he saw me have Briscoe as my name because he thought, well, that wasn't very original. Chris had insomnia. He probably didn't think of anything specific.
Right.
There's a reason it's Briscoe, and it's because of Gouch. Gouch in this movie, I think, is the inspiration for Bly from Briscoe County Jr. I think that actor saw this movie because if you go back, from my memory, his movements, his style, and everything about the characterization is very reminiscent of Gouch in this movie.
I could see that.
The fashion, the clothing, the demeanor. It was like, wow, did that guy go and see this movie and base his entire Briscoe County look and everything on it? And I'm going to stand by it unless someone tells me something different.
Well, I mean, It's funny now that you say that. One of the things that struck me about this movie, and we even see it fairly early on, is that this is a lot more, I guess, optimistic than a lot of the spaghetti westerns we've seen thus far. Um, and so it does have some tonal connections to Briscoe County Jr., right?
Yeah.
Because Briscoe Jr. is also, let's mash two genres up together and present both with an optimistic edge, and a little bit of pulp sensibility. And to be fair, there's a lot of that in this movie.
Well, one scene specific, even a minor spoiler, is when you get Gouch jumps from the actor jumps from a 2-story building down and just sort of
Yeah,
bounces and stands back up. 2 stories, Eddie.
yeah, yeah.
I'm fine.
Amazing.
What the fuck?
Really good shit. Yeah.
But my other big note: these outlaws are utterly fucking ridiculous. On the
Oh, God,
train,
yeah.
getting up, I'm just gonna assemble my gun in front of all these people. Couldn't stop laughing.
Yes. So it's almost like both the soldiers and the outlaws are terrible, but they're terrible in different directions, right? And again, like when I was watching it, I was like, is this gonna be a comedy? Because I know the premise going in, which is a cowboy and a samurai go off and do things. And so like I can easily see that being a comedy. Right. And it's like at this stage, I thought maybe this is gonna be a comedic movie. And it's not quite that. But I think where it kind of lands is the outlaws have style.
Yeah.
And the soldiers don't, which is why they lose.
They are definitely more sort of cardboard cutouts.
Right. Right.
Which is also why I chose the line that I did to start it off with, because it's humorous. Like even the whoosh sound of him drawing the gun and then making it into a full joke, brilliant.
Yeah. 100%. Completely agree.
All right. I guess we'll get to the good point. Link and Gouch are leaders of the gang of bandits who decide to rob $400,000 from a passenger train and rob all the passengers while you're at it. There's a Japanese ambassador on his way to Washington to deliver a ceremonial sword. I have a different thing in my notes. I should have edited those better. I love this part of it when I actually pause to tell you about things I should have done better. And I've totally stopped looking at the note page now to talk to Eddie, who's
Right.
giving me that look. Is like, why don't you just read what you put on the page?
No, I'm giving you a look at, like I'm trying to read actually what you've written. So
so I didn't write this one completely. Some of this I pulled from the wiki, which I usually don't do, but it's been a busy couple weeks for me. So I
right.
apologize to you, dear listener, but we both know I don't really mean that apology because it's just funny. Gout steals the golden handled sword and kills one of the ambassador's samurai bodyguards. By Gouch's orders, the bandits double cross Link, throwing dynamite into a train car he's in, leaving him for dead. Before Gouch leaves, the surviving samurai bodyguard, Kudo, asks his names and swears to kill him.
What can you?
Eddie, I like Link right away. And
yes.
The reason I like Link is because he has like that second guy that's I don't trust Gouch, and Link is very protective of his other people. And says, it's not you I don't trust. I just don't trust him. Just give me my cut. And you get an establishing thing here of Link being an outlaw, but a professional and solid.
Right.
Because he antagonizes him a little bit because he's a little bit of an ass, and then gives him his cut. And it's like, get out of here.
Right. And what kind of happens, we learn this more explicitly later, but what happens here is that we see very quickly Gouch and Kaneda, Kuruda, both experience different levels of honor, right? Link's honor is, I did my part. I want to get paid fairly. I'm not asking for anything extra. And he gets screwed over. And Kuruda is much more knightly honor. And that's one of the things that I found interesting watching this film is that I think partially it's because several Japanese actors were involved with it, is that it didn't slide to the stereotypes as fast. Really, not. I mean, less than I thought overall. But even at the beginning, they focus more on the knightly-ish virtues of Bushido. And I think it was a good choice because audiences watching this from the West would have gone, "Oh, I know how knights work, and this is basically
Yeah.
the same thing." His master was killed, so he has to defend his master, and so that was, I think, a good choice to demystify and de-exoticize a lot of Japanese culture.
I agree. That's spot on. Um, watching the train robbery as I'm thinking about it reminds me of Red Dead Redemption 2. There's a train robbery that seems to happen almost not the exact same way, but very reminiscent. Like the people that made that game saw this train robbery because you stop the train, you get shenanigans about them trying to get into the train, and all of that. It made me want to play the game again.
I mean, I would argue that lots of these movies have train robberies. So, like, I suspect it's not like they saw this one and said, "Cool, that's the one we want." I'm sure they watched a lot of them, um, but certainly the style of it and the way it was shot, I agree, did kind of. I could see how the team putting together Rockstar probably looked at this as, okay, let's look at lots of films, but maybe they picked one or two films as, let's take stills from or watch this to kind of figure out how we're gonna structure it and whatnot. And this may have been one of the films they actually used as a firmer basis for that scene.
Because when you're mentioning like the outlaws having style, that really clicks because the outlaws in the Red Dead Redemption 2 have a certain style and swagger they go for. So that's
Right.
probably why it reminds me so much of this. They are distinctive characters, and you remember like Dutch from Red Dead Redemption 2 and all these characters and how they interacted.
Sure. And in similar to this movie, the protagonist of Redemption 2 doesn't like some of the excesses his gang is doing, wants to just get his cut and get out, and has refused that.
Yeah, which is it's a good recurring trait. And
Mhm.
the opposite of which, of course, is Couch, who like kills a fellow passenger, pulls up a soldier that kills him, kills one of the samurai, is consistently just killing people left and right, getting a glee from it.
Right. Mhm.
Which then goes and plays on the old stereotype how a lot of people think that beautiful or pretty is good versus what some people consider ugly to be bad and good. Because Gouch in this movie would probably be the most stereotypical attractive male in the film.
Right. Counterpoint also, he's literally wearing black, so like it's not subtle.
No, come on, it's 70, 71. How subtle do you want them to be?
Right. We are past the iconography of the literal white hat, black hat iconography, but this movie, again, that's why I kept feeling like it was more like a forward film in the sense that again, the villain is literally wearing black. So like there's touches of moving slightly away from the very morally gray spaghetti western, something that's closer to, but not exactly up the same as those older Hollywood blockbusters.
Yeah, literally wearing black. I loved the ambassador.
Yeah.
Who, when they finally get into the cart, when they finally get into like the train area with him, he instantly attempts to de-escalate at every single opportunity.
Hmm.
Like, even, where's your money? It's like, the money's right there, please take it. Constantly doing things to like try to smooth everything over and explaining things to them, which works great with like my opinion of Link in this movie, who is like, thank you for your money, it's time to go. So you've built up like professionals. It's competency porn, essentially, is what it is for
Yeah.
me.
Right.
Super competent ambassador, super competent outlaw. We've parted with everyone alive, if not for asshole.
Yeah. And he even, his guards are more reactive than he is, which again shows a not complicated, but a nuanced relationship in a very short space, because not all of the Japanese characters think and act the same way, in the same way that not all of the bandits think and act the same way. So we have two groups of people, each of which have their own interesting ideas, even if they're not, again, complicated. Like the guards want to protect the money, and the ambassador wants to save their lives. Um, The other thing that I found really good is the actor playing the ambassador uh, clearly has an accent. It is not the stereotypical Japanese accent of someone speaking English, but it is present, which made the whole thing feel more authentic to me. Right? It
Yeah.
wasn't the mixing of L's and R's and that stuff. I mean, I really believe this was a guy who was hired to be the ambassador to an English speaking country and therefore did his best to learn the language to the best of his ability. I really believe he was a master. And again, like you said, the way he tried to de-escalate, he uses diplomacy. So it's like all of this made the character that we see for a very short time on screen very real.
So the actor, I think his actual name is up in the notes somewhere, and if I remember right, actually was incredibly proficient at multiple languages, and he
Oh,
taught
nice.
and helped Tafune with the pronunciations and everything throughout throughout the shooting of the film.
Nice. That's
Like,
really good. Yeah.
oh,
I mean, I was a little surprised. We haven't got there yet, but I was a little surprised at how good Mifune's English was as well. But again, like we're not to the points both in the history of cinema and also the history period we're looking at where I would expect a Japanese character speaking English to just have no accent, right? We're, if this is a 2026 movie, it's like they should just have no accent. But it makes sense in 1870, they've had only so much exposure to the United States. So therefore, naturally,
yeah.
they're not going to be speaking unaccented English.
I don't remember the exact years off the top of my head. Otherwise, I could break down to like when diplomatic relations started, some of the different treaties that went into it. If you really want to know all that stuff, go buy a Haunted West because it's in there.
Yes, I remember
Look at
that.
that.
It's a good
Pitch my own
section.
book. How's that?
Woohoo!
Dynamite in the car. And it's, oh,
It's ludicrous. Love it.
all right. If people can't tell, this movie is already hitting like the watchable level of acceptance, like right away.
Mm-hmm.
It
Yep.
establishes itself saying, I am a watchable film. Go forward.
Right. And this is, I mentioned before, like I was getting a bit of a James Bond vibe. I think this was part of it in the sense of slightly hyperbolic action sequences that make for good visual spectacle because like there's no way one stick of dynamite explodes that much, right? But it doesn't matter. It's I threw a dynamite into a train. I wanted to see Big Boom. I had now seen Big Boom. That's what you expect to see in these kinds of movies at this stage. So it is very kind of Bondian pacing, Bondian action. Not quite right, but you see what I'm saying.
Yeah. So I think this is the only Western that Terrence directed. And I am sad if that is true because I would watch
Yeah.
another one of his Westerns. Spoiler, I really like this movie. Man, surprise. Because I'm talking about it excitedly. Man, I know you're shocked.
Right.
It's just good. And that's maybe after El Topo, my bar has been lowered a little bit.
Well, I mean, to be fair, I mean, like this is a lot of ways the exact opposite of El Topo. This is not necessarily trying to tell a deeper story.
No.
It's just a fun story because of how things have aged and evolved. It's also telling an interesting story about how people from different cultures can actually find common ground and work together and respect each other. But that is not necessarily the fault of the film. That is just how 50 plus years have evolved. But it very much, even at this early stage, I was like, okay, this is in a lot of ways a fun action film.
And touching on what you're just talking about, it's not surprising that I would love a film whose initial conceit is two different cultures banging up together to find a way to move and work together. I don't know why
Yep.
that would appeal to me, not like I write about it and everything else.
No idea. No idea.
All right. My last bit before we move on is Kurdua. I'll never pronounce names. I barely see Link right. Makes you wonder how I would say Zelda. Is that he intimidates the group of outlaws by staring at them to riding off. They don't shoot him. He even draws a gun and he's like, Cole stares him and they all leave.
Which is again a very samurai movie trope. The two samurai stare at each other, get ready to draw their swords, and the person watching goes, I already know who's won, kind of thing. That's very much a samurai movie thing. And they found the way to kind of work that into Western iconography because the cold, hard stare. The difference is that they have guns and he doesn't. And yet somehow it still works because he is a samurai character in a Western film. And so like it's an interesting way of showing how those tropes overlap, but then also how it slightly deforms the Western tropes because in that moment he's actually in a samurai film, right? And that's how samurai films work. It doesn't matter what weapon you have. Whereas in a Western, the only way that works is if you both have guns.
Yes. And whoever's faster.
Right.
After Link is revived, the ambassador instructs him to assist Kurto in tracking down Gouch. Kurto has 1 week to kill Gouch and recover the sword. If he fails, both Kurto and the ambassador will commit seppuku for allowing the sword to be stolen and leaving the dead samurai unavenged. Link reluctantly agrees to help. Once they set off in pursuit of the gang, Link repeatedly in more and more ridiculously obnoxious ways attempts to elude Kurto to no avail.
God. Oh my God.
Shenanigans.
Like it's comprised in just kind of that last sentence there, and I agree. There's no reason to spell it out more than that, but like that comprises a good 10, 15 minutes of the movie, and by far my favorite part of the film is just Link going, I'm gonna try to pull something off, and the samurai going, nope. And it's like, I'm just kidding.
The fact that he pushes him down, he says, you go first, and tries to push him down a cliffside.
Right.
I'm sorry. He rolls down the cliffside, and we have Kurto running down the cliffside behind him. Cowboy like just speeding, getting beat up, and Kurto running at full pace right beside him, saying, "This was a bad idea for you."
Yep.
Oh,
and again, like every time, Link just going, haha, just kidding. You know, like immediately, like unfazed, like that didn't work. I'm not mad about it. Fair play. I'll try the next time. Like, you know, trying to sneak out while sleeping, and it's like, oh, hey, you're awake. I was just, you know, going up to do a thing. Like, I love that Link is again that very much that trickster dynamic of like just next thing. He's so quick witted. It's wonderful.
And I love how smart Kurto is because he's like, that scene you're talking about. Give me your boots because he knows he's not going to get far on the dirt without boots. Oh, it's like just little things that reinforces how great both of them are.
Right. A great. There's a great way of using xenophobia against him, where Link just assumed that Karuto couldn't speak English, and so he's just openly insulting him, and Karuto's not responding. So he's like, that proves you speak English. And then Karuto, one point, responds, he's like, why didn't you say anything? It's like, there was no need to. Which not only, because first of all, it would be a very difficult movie if Karuto couldn't speak English. So like at some point he has to speak English, right? But they do it in a way that makes Karuto look cool. It doesn't diminish Link because again, Link just immediately rolls with these things. So we established a couple times that Link just rolls when there's a challenge. He just rolls with this one too. So they actually both look really good as a result of that scene, even though Link's in the back foot and his xenophobia is being used against him. But also Link doesn't. He's surprised, but it's not like, why is this Japanese man speaking English? It's more like, oh, that's on me. I should have figured that out. And so you get this wonderful balance of retroactively going, Karuto put up with so much shit for like 5 minutes and just didn't say anything. And then suddenly it's like, no, it's because I'm a samurai. And then that's why. And it's like, oh, so good.
And after he's able to like let him know that he speaks English, we get the fact that we have Link knowing that in 7 days he's going to kill himself. And he's like, you know what? I'd like to see that. And then you have Kurto gets to quip back. Well, I'm going to cut off your head first. And then he goes, you know what? I don't want to see that. It's
right.
like,
so good. Yeah. And as things like, because Mifune is a comedic actor, even though he's playing a serious character, he's into the comedic timing, which is perfect, right? Like so many dramatic actors wouldn't have gotten that necessarily. but like
Yeah.
Mifune knows exactly when to pitch that line, when to drop it to make it roll. And again, Bronson's picking it up and immediately flowing with it. So it's a funny scene, right? But again, when I'm first watching, I'm like, this doesn't quite feel like a comedy. It just feels like two quick-witted characters, and it turns out that is actually the correct interpretation. You know?
This is an odd couple buddy
Yes,
comedy movie is what we have.
yes.
It oh so awesome. I
Um,
can't see Clint Eastwood bantering like this, knowing
no,
that's who they
exactly,
originally wanted.
exactly. No, Clint Eastwood does not have the same comedic chops, or I'll be charitable and say at this point in his career he did not have. I don't think he ever did, but I haven't seen his later work, so maybe I'm wrong. Um, but at this point in time, no, and he wasn't known for it. Whereas Bronson, because no one quite knew what his place was in cinema, he had the flexibility to do that. And again, Mifune is a really funny. Also, I don't know if this is true. This is me extrapolating from what little I know about Toshiro Mifune. Mifune is very much a foodie. He likes to
Yeah.
incorporate food into his scenes. So I don't know how much of that sushi scene at the fireside is in the script and how much of it is him.
I'm willing to bet, because I don't know if you saw. So, in case people are curious, I did put a lot of notes up there. There's something specifically in the notes that talks about one of the things that Buffoni did is he cooked all sorts of food for the people in the movie,
That
like
doesn't
behind the
surprise me.
scenes and stuff, to like entertain them and make friends. He brought like all this food over from Japan and like served them different
Mhm.
things that probably some of them had had before, and that's all part of what he did. So I'm willing to bet the actor made that choice to have that in the scene that we have.
Probably because one of the things that's so fascinating about Mifune is that it's actually really hard to act with food. Um, there are a lot of reasons, which partially is if you have to retake scenes, you have to get the food. You have to make sure the food is consistent throughout the whole scene. Like how much food you've eaten is consistent throughout the whole scene, and also if you're taking a lot of scenes, you end up eating a lot, right?
Yeah.
Um, uh, but Mifune always has felt that people they get social they're social around food, so he felt like that was important to incorporate in appropriate scenes. So, like, again, I just watched the scene in, Seven Samurai where, food plays a really big part of how he's portraying the scene, because, well, minor spoilers for, Seven Samurai, but there is an entire thread about how, the villagers are giving up the rights to the samurai, and that becomes a point of contention for Mifune's character specifically. So food is also a plot point, but he makes sure he's incorporated into his actual scene. So again, when I saw the fireside scene, I'm like, that feels accurate to what I know about the actor. And you notice that Bronson doesn't actually eat during that scene, but Mifune is, which plays well for the scene itself because he's doing the, what the hell is this boring crap, thing. So it's not a problem per se, but it's again really hard to act with food.
The last one I'll touch on this before we can move on is when he pushes him over the side of the cliff
Yep.
and he thinks he's escaped, and we end up having a stick versus katana fight between the two of them.
Oh my god, that's so
Oh.
good.
And what I like even more, though, that if you didn't watch the movie, haven't seen the movie yet, there's going to be a parallel scene where something like that comes up in a more deadly context.
Right. Um. So one thing that I initially had a problem with these scenes because of my personal historical knowledge, but the movie does eventually confront is the way Kotoda handles guns. Right. It's implied that he does not understands how these guns work. And it's played in a way because at one point in time, I think Link even acts like it might be later in the scene where Link acts like tries to explain to him how a gun works, right? Um, but I know that guns were readily available to samurai well before this point. It was actually part of the reason why the Dutch fucked up samurai culture was because they brought the firearms in. Um, the movie does seem to eventually land on the point of they have not seen they haven't seen revolvers. And as I understand it, you may be able to correct me on this. That was a fairly American technological innovation that in 1870 probably was just starting to become more widespread.
Oh, then, do you want to get into like calibers, like paper cartridges versus other things?
Well,
So
I mean,
let's, for simplicity, let's say like 1850s. So yeah, but at the same
okay,
time, if I remember history right, um, Asian cultures created essentially like fireworks and gunpowder first. That's
right,
that's me pulling like some deep knowledge I haven't had to use in decades.
right, because China had that advantage over Japan historically, just way back in the day.
Yeah. So, but they would definitely not have like the mass production that we would have had in the U.S. Like that's
Right.
not.
Because like Japanese, like they learned innovations like the rifled barrels from the West and things like that. So like it's not they didn't
Yeah,
have access to firearms, they didn't have access to the
our
specific
style.
technology. Right, exactly. So I think the movie more or less lands there in a way that doesn't involve this lengthy digression into the technology of firearms. But for a while in the movie, I was like, nope, samurai have seen guns before, but then they do pull out from that. So
Oh, so many things. Gouch and four outlaws bury the money. Then Gouch guns them all down. So he's the only one that knows his hiding place. He pays off the others who go their way, and the remaining gang stays with him. While tracking Gouch, Kuroda reveals that his countrymen's ancient links to their own culture and the samurai ways are slowly disappearing, and he believes the only way to honor his ancestors and his own life is to bring back the sword. To approach a ranch that has been taken over by some of the outlaws, they kill them in a gorely graphic way and then take their horses. Link then manages to escape but has a change of heart and returns, having grown to respect the strict code Kurta lives by. He warns Kurta, however, that he will kill him if Gouch dies before revealing where the money is hidden.
yes. Oh, again, these scenes are really great. Uh, in particular, I really enjoyed the scene of Kuroda talking about how the samurai class is disappearing.
Yeah.
Um, again, because 1870, the Western way of life is not disappearing yet, but by the time you're watching this movie, the way Westerns are watched and consumed has disappeared. So there's still a resonance there, and also it's a sense of this is coming for the cowboys in 20, 30 years too, you know.
Yeah.
So it ended up being a scene that had a lot of themes and symbiosis, symbolism, whatever one of those in it. But it was like again nowhere near like El Topo. It was just this is a really good scene for a really good character, but because of how it was pitched and where it was placed in the movie, ended up having a lot of strong resonance.
Well, it also hits after you get the all the shenanigans between the two of them, where they're actually starting to slowly work together as a team, and there's a layer of respect starting to go back and forwards.
Right.
So that builds on it.
Right. And then you get the parallel of Link stealing Kuroda's clothes to parallel Kuroda taking his boots and demanding Kuroda to. I thought we
We're
were
not
there.
there yet.
Oh, I thought we were there. Sorry. You
No,
mentioned the.
we haven't even met that character yet.
All
We're at
right,
like
so
the where they're about to team up to go take on the outlaws at the ranch.
I forgot. There are two scenes where Link demands Kuroda not kill Gouch. So
Yeah,
I
it
think it's
becomes a
like one. Sorry.
recurring theme for the last half of the movie. Don't do it.
Right.
Don't do it. Don't do it.
Apologies. My apologies.
Because this is
But
where we get the great debate between them from like a brave man versus a stupid man. When the outlaws say, "Where are your
right.
daughters?" and the farmer won't tell them, and you have Kuruda saying that's a really brave man, and you have Link saying he's stupid because then he's killed.
Right. Right. And that again, they're not talking about suicide because that is the knots on the sword. That's the reference to in 7 days. If I don't get the sword back, I'll have to kill myself.
Yeah,
They're not talking about that, but they are talking about that.
yeah. So it's a light, watchable film that has some additional layers under it if you think about it, which goes back to something. This is a little bit of my synopsis, but we always talk about is that you need that watchability to engage people to ride with your thing. And I think introducing this to people in 1970 is spot on perfect tone.
Yeah, completely agree.
I We don't get to see it often, but I love the fact that Link fans the fucking trigger on his gun to kill people. I love it. It is a
Yeah.
small beat. Oh, I never see it. You don't see it often in westerns. It is not really that effective, I don't think, but it is beautifully cinematic to see.
Well, and it's another. I interpreted it as a character moment too. This movie is watchable, and the character leads are so charismatic that it does invite you to maybe overthink slightly, which I think is a good thing here. But uh, I don't believe Link did that during any point in time of the heist. And but Kurita has proven how fast he is with the sword, and Link has commented, "You're really fast with that." And so I interpret that as him going, "I have to be as fast as this guy now." And so he starts doing new tactics to try to keep up with the samurai.
I I didn't think about it like that. I thought about it more from the perspective that during the heist, Link actively tried not to use a gun. Like everyone else was
Oh,
quick drawing, and primarily he's not afraid to kill people. We've established that. Like, I'll
right,
kill you, but that wasn't his primary go-to.
right,
Versus here,
um,
we need to kill these people. It changes like
right.
how he approached it.
That's a good point. Yeah, I mean, it could be both.
Yeah, I think so. What I also love in the background as they take the horses from this farm and to ride off, and we get like this is how you ride a horse, which I didn't love that scene because that where, but
Horseplaining.
they leave that woman, mother, whoever she is,
Yeah.
to dig the grave by herself.
Yep.
In almost every other film you would have had, they're all right, man, we'll help you, and good guys help her dig a grave. No, we're on a timeline. We don't got time to fuck around.
Right. Um, yeah, it's funny about the horse scene. Like in the moment, I liked it because again, it was horseplaining. It's like this is how you ride a horse, and then the samurai who train on horseback.
Yeah.
Um, and then he immediately starts doing horse tricks with him. Um, and so like in the moment it was funny, but like in retrospect, you're right because we've already had that scene with the English. You know, we
Mm-hmm.
don't need to reiterate Kurita has skills that Link is unaware of, and Link is being the stupid white man who thinks that no one understands anything. We didn't need that scene anymore. So I agree with you. Like it doesn't need to be here. Um, it could have just been, you know how to ride a horse, and then he does horse tricks, and Link go, cool, yes you do, right? I think that
Yep.
exact scene could have done a little differently. Um, uh, but in the ends, I mean, I'm not. I don't hate it just because the fact that like it proves that Link is he doesn't change quickly. You know, he's still good in some respects, make the same mistakes. He is for a surprisingly fast-paced movie. He is still slow to appreciate Kurita as a man. Um, but this is like the last gasp of him seeing him as a Japanese man. After this, he starts seeing him just as a man. Um, but I agree. It was paced a bit weird. I could have seen it done a little bit differently. But I kind of think I see what they're trying to do here, which is that this is the last moment of Link thinking that he is someone other than who he is.
Okay. Yeah. Continuing the pursuit, they decide the best way to get Gouch is through his lover, Christina. The duo travel to a brothel in the town of San Lucas, where she resides, and seal her into her room. The next morning, 4 of Gouch's men arrive to fetch Christina because the plot demands him to be here immediately. Link
Yep.
and Kruta kill 3 of them, and the 4th man, aka you know what? I'm not going to make a James Bond joke. Almost dead. The 4th man is sent back to Gouch with a message that they will exchange Christina for the stolen sword and the money. The switch is to take place at an abandoned mission a day's ride away.
Right. Uh, I admit, this was a part where I didn't quite know who Christina was. And maybe in a case of like I just missed a bit of dialogue. Um, uh, it's explained after Link is in the room with her what her relationship is.
Yeah.
But leading up to it, I was like, why are they here? What's going on? Um, but it was a minor point. Again, I quickly got over it. More interestingly, the movie's doing a really good job of quietly comparing Kuroda to European knights. It's like they never say that word, but the way they position him and the way that he gets talked about helps the audience to really compare. Oh, this is basically just a knight. He's a knight. He acts like in a knightly way. And so when he's in the brothel, very clearly okay with getting down to fuck, right? And it was a great moment. He's like, yeah, sure, let's do it, you know?
Well, it's not quite. There was like a whole beat of treating her more like a person than like other people do. So that was like a nice exchange there too. But when it came time for action,
chased. Yeah.
Yes. Which I loved. I also love the fact that you have a Link trying to peek in the door and he throws a knife at the door to let him know that's no, get out of here.
No, we're done. Very good.
And the sex workers, when the two of them go upstairs, the one's downstairs, one of them jokes, well, I guess there's nothing else to do here. I'm going to go home to my husband. I loved it. I laughed. I was like, oh, that's awesome. Yeah. It's the little things.
It was genuinely nice to see sex workers who just enjoy their work, right? It's more competency porn, right? And I feel like that was actually extending here. It's like, it's just a job, you know? It's nothing to be upset about, nothing to be weird about, you know? They're not a morally gray, tortured woman with a heart of gold. Not just a job, mate, you know? And so I was like, I really appreciate just kind of the blasé attitude they had.
It was perfect. Okay. I've not talked a lot about it, and I don't think you've talked a lot about it either, but the shooting and stabbing through the door, the fact he stabs him through the door and like blood goes was the most spaghetti scene in the whole movie. Like
it was. I completely agree.
I heard the words Django in my mind.
Django. In a way, it's a bit like Django in the sense that the movie goes for a good long time of fairly reduced violence, and then there's just a sudden scene where it becomes extremely violent all of a sudden. So yeah, that you're right. That was very spaghetti in that specific regard because it's not like constantly violent. It's not constantly gory. It's always at very specific moments that happens.
And one of the things I like about it so much, though, is that we've had those spikes of violence, but they are really good at what they do, and so the violence shouldn't last that long.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Against similar numbers or slightly larger numbers, it should be over pretty quick for both of them, just dispatching people. And we got to see that again and again. And I love that.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And
anything else?
I was just gonna say, like, the plot is straightforward. I don't want to say it's simple because it's not quite right. But because of how they position the characters, you can kind of anticipate where the plot's going from here, which I like, because Link and Cutter are basically asking for the thing they've always wanted. Both of them wanted from the beginning of the movie, which is Link's share of the money and the sword. Yeah. And Gouch is like, sure, I'll do that. But if you've watched this movie with any kind of paying attention, you know he's not going to do that. He murdered 3 people to keep that money to himself. He's not going to do that, which means he's probably going to kill Christina. So, like, you kind of see where this movie's going to go. And so it's not in this plot is simple in its obvious way, but more in a slightly noirish inevitability. Like, this is going to go badly soon kind of way. Which
100%.
Given that there's been some comedy here, the violence popping here, the drama picks up here. Christina's still kind of a bit of comic relief at this moment, but like, the stakes are actually being raised now. So it's interesting how the movie has been slowly shifting from, like you said, buddy cop dynamic to something a little more serious. And it's been to the point where, for me at least, when I was watching the movie, I was like, oh, this is actually dramatic stakes now. I didn't quite realize we were here. And that's really good in the movie's part because it slowly dragged me into this new tone without me quite realizing it.
So before I go on, I've given this movie a lot of praise. Right now, I'm about to... So it did some great, I think, work trying to culturally represent, from my American perspective, some of the Asian perspective and like introducing samurai and some of the Japanese culture and everything else.
Uh-huh.
It did a good job, in my opinion, as an American that doesn't know a lot about it.
Right.
Now we're about to take a total hard right turn into racism.
Yeah, racism and ridiculousness. Yes.
En route to the exchange, Christina escapes a duo and runs into a band of indigenous peoples, killing one of them that attempted to assault her. In retribution, the leader bounds her neck with some sort of tie of wet rawhide that will slowly shrink and eventually strangle her. Link and Curtis show up. They attack indigenous people, killing most of them and driving away some of the rest of them.
Right.
That's about 20 minutes of movie.
It is, because the indigenous folks
Christina's
are
seduction scene.
right. Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Which, Eddie, I am known for liking to see naked people. That's what I'm
Sure.
known for right now on this
Yeah.
podcast. I fully support it. Every chance we get, I am glad to see it. I was glad to see Ursula in taking her moment. But Eddie, that was utterly gratuitous. Why did she take off her shirt to put back on the same shirt? There was no point. Even I was like, why is that happening?
No, I absolutely right. Like at this point in the movie, I was like, oh, is this where we're trying to get a specific rating? You know, and that's not true, because that's not quite how movies worked in 71. But like it very much felt like it's the, here's where we have the naked scene. You know, it very much felt shoehorned in.
Even I was irritated by that scene. And
Right.
it hurt my soul. But I did like the interactions of her constantly trying to use her skill set to get one over on Link until it works.
Right. But you know, the movie that I think this ends up comparing in my mind a lot with is Once Upon a Time in the West. Just, I mean, partially because Bronson was in both of them, right? But there was a similar seduction scene, and that one was way more effective and showed less skin.
Yeah.
You know? So it's a case of like, I think you're trying to be Leone, and sir, you're not a Leone, you know?
This is also the bit, though, where we get the scene that you were talking about, where he takes his clothes.
Right. And I'm going to say this. Weirdly, there's more sexual energy in that scene than there was between Bronson and Christina.
Because I would love to have seen more movies with two of them together.
Completely agree. Right. They are fantastic. And again, because it's what's the actual dialogue is straightforward. It is, like you said, Link is going, I'm not going to give you your clothes back until you agree not to kill Gouch. And first it's no, and then start bickering over time frames. And then eventually Dakota agrees. But the way they're delivering it and the way they're talking about it, you can see the betrayal on Kuroda's face and the regret that Link has that he has to negotiate this.
Mm-hmm.
It was a very powerful scene because both men thought that the other understood, and it turns out they didn't. And for all of the here's how to ride a horse scene, or I didn't really speak English scenes, they at this point genuinely thought they understood each other, and it turns out they first time they actually have a miscommunication, because why didn't Link understand that Kuroda needs to kill this man, and why doesn't Kuroda understand that Link needs this money?
Yeah. It is incredibly solid, well acted. And Christina's just there, like, should I be in this scene?
Honestly, should she be in this movie, frankly, but it's not a knock on her. It's the parts she had, she did what she could with them, but she didn't need to be there. You're right.
All right. You know what? I'm gonna skip over most of it. So Christina with the rawhide on her neck.
Oh God.
Eddie, I'm willing to believe all of this movie I'm willing to take like vampires, werewolves in it. The most unrealistic thing I've seen is him pulling a pistol and shooting that rawhide off. Kid, whole movie,
Yeah.
blah. Like what the fuck?
I had the exact same reaction. I was watching it. I was like, if Chris does not make a note of this, by God, I'm going to talk about this scene. For two reasons, right? Like one, it's so implausible. Nothing about what we've learned about Link implies that he is that level of marksman. If this had been in Johnny Guitar, I would have believed it, right? Because the movie went out of its way to talk about how good of a shot Johnny is, even though he's reluctant about it. Nothing about like it's just because the protagonist in westerns by default gain good shot. But if Kurita had cut that rope off with his sword, I would have completely believed it. Because we spent a lot of time showing how precise he is with his sword.
Yes. Or you know what? I would even let it go because he's been super accurate with knives. If he'd thrown a knife and cut it, I'd let that go.
Yeah. Everything in the movie implies that he should have been the one to do that. You could have even like had like a very slight bleeding cut on her neck, just a tiny little scratch, and it would have been perfect. But just and then it just pops right off, and there's no mark on her whatsoever, and it's just like I genuinely lost a lot of momentum on this movie. I said, why is this one small scene doing this? And I think it's because everything in the movie implies that Kurita is the hero. Yeah. But because it's a Western, Link needs to be the hero. And the movie is at odds with the audience that's pitching the movie at.
Which it shouldn't be given the international vibe of the movie. But at the end of the day, they're probably going to go back and say that we're aiming also at Americans. Right. And everyone wants to see their white male protagonist.
Right. Exactly. But structurally, everything in the movie leads to Kurita should have saved her.
Yes. All right. Had to talk about it. Couldn't let it go. Yep. Utterly fucking ridiculous. Cannot fucking believe it. At the mission, Link and Kurita are ambushed by Gouch and his men. Despite Christina's protest, Gouch tells one of his men to shoot Link. Just then, the indigenous people come back to attack in force. They were, and the people inside repel the attack from inside the mission. Pew pew pew, boom boom. Then after it's burned down in the surrounding cane fields, after all the indigenous people are either dead or have fled, leaving only Link, Kurita, Christina, and Gouch alive. And there's one other beat after this. I'm getting there, like Eddie. I love 85% of this movie.
But this last 15% is hard.
Yeah.
What's even more frustrating for me is everything about the inclusion of indigenous people in this movie is because Westerns have these kinds of scenes. Right?
Yeah.
You could have literally replaced all of those scenes with when Gouch shot his 4 members of the guy, shot them to hide where the money was. They survive. They capture Christina to try to leverage against Gouch. They attack when Christina gets saved. Those bandits could have taken all of the place of the indigenous people here, and literally nothing in the plot changes. In fact, the plot gets slightly better because now that makes sense for why Gouch and Link would work together, because they both want the money that these people are trying to take. And also, these people were responsible for the murder of the ambassador, so there's a reason why Kurita would be involved in that. But they're just, and I'm using this intentionally dismissively, they are the orcs of this film.
And I hate it. I hate it so much.
Yep.
Like, and it's also frustrating because if they'd done what you've done, we've already established that Gouch let most of the other dudes go. They could have easily rounded those dudes back up with promise of more money and attacked.
Yeah.
Because given they wanted a whole bunch of bodies to kill people, which is what they would have done, but they would have all still been outlaws and everything would have been fine.
Right. Now, granted, this is basically Once Upon a Time in the West again. It's the let's turn the gang against the leader to have an experience. But I do think that worked in that movie really well too.
But I also mentioned earlier there's a parallel scene where Karuda and someone using like a spear-like weapon. Here we have one of the indigenous people using like a spear-like weapon and Karuda fighting him. All right. Anything about that piece?
No, let's wrap
Is
it
the
up
epic
because I
battle
think
in the
we.
whole movie?
To be fair, it may be the epic battle, but it's not the most interesting battle.
All right. Gouch faces off against Link, who has run out of bullets. Kruda prepares to kill Gouch, but hesitates, remembering his promise to Link. Gouch shoots Karuda while Link seizes the opportunity to grab a rifle. Gouch is confident that Link will leave him alive to learn where the money's hidden. Link, however, decides that Karuda's honor is more important, kills him, and promises the dying samurai that he'll return the sword to the ambassador. After Karuda's buried, Link rejects Christina's offer to join her to track down the money. Shortly before the ambassador's train arrives, he hangs a sword from a telegraph wire in front of the station, fulfilling his pledge. End of movie.
I was hoping by this point I would have an answer to this question, but I don't. So that last image of the sword hanging from the telegraph wire, I hated it when I watched it. And I was like, why? I went to Wikipedia to look up what was going on because I didn't actually understand what was happening here.
Yeah.
And the intent is because I was like, he promised to return the sword to the ambassador, and then he hangs it on a wire. And I'm like, maybe I'm missing something. And that again, the Wikipedia summary basically says what you just said, which is that that's his way to return the sword. And I was like, okay, well, maybe I need to think about this. I think I still hate it.
So I don't love it, but it goes back to the very beginning where the ambassador says, I'll be back here at this time on this train at this point.
Right. So just be there to hand him the fucking sword, you idiot.
Yeah, I agree, but it is what it is.
I can't tell if it's supposed to be pretentious or if it's the shit, we forgot to book the actor for an extra day of shooting. Right. There's something off about it. But to be honest, I also don't even think you need that, right? Like, if you just end the movie where Link rejects Christina's offer to get the money and just rides off, you could have ended the movie there.
I don't think you could. I think we needed to see at least the sword. I want to, I'll finger quotes loosely, in the ambassador's possession to know that Link fulfilled his promise. Because Link has been a trickster outlaw this whole time.
I guess that's fair.
So we needed that proof of it, but it should have been better.
My thought was because the promise of the sword is so linked to his desire to get the money, but that did also happen fairly quickly in screen time purposes. So I guess you're right. We do need to see something. So maybe that was just the best they could do with a constraint or something. The more I talk about it, the more it feels like it's a shooting constraint. Like they lost the film or something, and it's like, shit, I guess we'll do this.
I think you're forgetting, Eddie, how some movies ended in the 70s where they would just like suddenly stop and say shitty, and that would be the end of the movie.
Fair. No, that is legitimate.
Like Shaft should have had an extra 2 minutes at the end somewhere. This movie should have had an extra 2 minutes at the end somewhere.
Right. But I mean, ultimately, this movie ends the way you would think it would, which is that Kuroda could have killed Gouch, didn't because he respected Link, and dies as a result.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, considering death had been hanging over that character from literally the first moment we saw him, that's not at all a surprise. But it is entertaining because, like you said, we have both loved the charisma between these two actors so much that even though we know what's going to happen, it still feels bad in a good way. It's like I don't like this. I like this character a lot. I don't want him to die, and Link seems genuinely distraught at that consequence, and we like him more as a result of that. So like it's the ending in its collective. I like the actual last shots of the movie are what I'm conflicted about. That's why I was like, I had to think about it. I just don't think I I think I like the ending. I don't think I like the last 30 seconds of the movie. Is what it comes down to, which is weird, but it is what it is.
So I am in agreement with you. The thing also is, as I'm thinking about it, this so thinking about Once Upon a Time in the West and the end of Red Sun. It is. I'll note that Charles Brosnan has effectively lost, using finger quotes, two marginalized people dead at the end of movies where he gets to be the white male protagonist. And I'm using finger quotes for Once Upon a Time in the Old West because that Moses here was not a marginalized person, was pretending to be a marginalized person. Versus
Yep.
here is interesting to think about on one level, but the impact of like the death of that character on harmonica was minimal. The impact of Karuta on Link was substantial.
Right. Like with Once Upon a Time in the West, everything about why harmonica was doing this was crammed into one ropey flashback.
Yeah.
And it's like, here's all his character developments right now. And so it's like, yeah, I don't care. Whereas here, it's like, this was the guy I was joking with. This is the guy that made fun of me. This was the guy that he was a honorable man. He was a good person and also very competent.
And we killed a lot of people together.
Right. Yeah. He tried to do the right thing by his friends and died for it. So it is 1,000 times more earned than in that movie.
Yeah. Okay. What are your final thoughts on Red Sun? Don't compare Del Topo. We've established Del Topo as its own outlier.
I know. I will just say, however, that I had the same reaction to you of like how much of the reason why I like this is because it comes right after El Topo. But I think even if that weren't the case, I would still really enjoy this film for a lot of reasons. I mean, obviously, I've talked a lot about it. I have a soft spot that I'm slowly getting more knowledgeable about in regards to samurai films. So there's that obvious crossover. I actually quite liked Bronson in the Leone films, so seeing him again was a nice treat. But it just really comes down to something we've said many times, which is that yes, watchability is very important. In this case, the watchability, a large chunk of it comes down to really good casting. And it's hard for me to imagine a version of this film without those two actors. They carry so much of this film, and so much of this film works because of them. There are a surprisingly large number of issues I have with the movie. They just all cluster around the last quarter of it. And this is one of the rare times where I really enjoyed how the sex workers are portrayed, but also I feel like the sex worker characters were completely extraneous to the movie. But if you had to pitch cowboy and samurai hang out and do things together, there's so many ways it could have gone wrong. And this movie avoids nearly every one of those traps.
Yeah. So I've made it pretty clear from like the jump, I think, that I really like this movie. And it has a lot of the things that I myself like doing in my writing, which is taking different cultures and trying to put them together and having people work together and find some sort of common ground. Really important to me on a personal level, and getting to see it executed well, mostly in the 70s, was mind-blowing the first time I watched this movie. For Haunted West is where I saw this movie. A lot of these westerns I kind of discovered somewhat during the creation of Haunted West, because I would go and I track down other things I've never heard of and then watch them specifically for that. And I loved it. This was probably my favorite Charles Bronson movie ever, hands down.
Yeah. I'm not seeing a ton of movies with him in it, but certainly this is the one where I liked him the most. And specifically because he wasn't playing the gritty, laconic, tough guy.
Yeah, he got to use some of his own charisma, which, having the most movies I remember from are like those Death Wish films, and there's like nothing there. It's just
right. Yeah.
And this is different. And getting the beat from the samurai piece in a Western, I loved it. I've always loved it. I'm not rewatching samurai films as Eddy is this now, but it has made me more inclined to want to watch them again sooner. So what are we doing next, Eddy? What should people expect?
So we're gonna take a bit of a break. because it's been a while since we've done a speechless run. So I have convinced Chris, as he has convinced me to watch all these Western films. I have traded one of those favors, and I'm asking him to read a 2000 AD comic with me, but not Judge Dredd. In fact, we're going to watch the sci-fi epic Brink. Read the sci-fi epic Brink. We're going to read book 1 of that, and because it does not break down into convenient page numbers, when you see the episode, we'll tell you what pages we're covering, and then just read those, or read the whole thing because I think Brink is great. We'll see what Chris thinks of it.
I bet Dan Abnett would love it if people could see Brink. That means he had some movie or TV deal and making money.
Yeah, there we go. And then after all of that, okay.
Well, the reason Eddie doesn't want to cover Judge Dredd run is he doesn't want every episode for me to say, I am the law, repeatedly for like ad nauseum for an hour and a half.
Well, that and also 5 minutes of going, Jesus, fuck, police brutality, holy shit. Right. So
yeah.
Right. But anyway, after that, we're going to go back to this, and I will be picking up with Buck and the Preacher, 1972. So you have a month to find that.
You've never seen that movie.
I've heard of Buck and the Preacher, so that is more than Red Sun.
Oh god! Hey, before we forget, if people want to contact you and talk to you about El Topo, where can they do that?
Nowhere. I will never discuss El Topo again. You can find me at pugsteady.com. That's my website. That's where you can find me on Blue Sky. Or you can find me on the Darker Hue Discord, where probably posting the latest Big Finish deals, because that seems to be what we've been doing lately.
I know. I spent a bunch of money on that. People want to contact me. You can talk to me about El Topo, as I recommended El Topo to a friend of the podcast, Ariel. Begrudgingly, I said, I made Eddie watch this. And they were like, what? El Topo. She's like, what is that? And then I told her, it's like, you don't have to watch it. And they were like, I'm watching this ASAP.
We will find out if she's still a friend of the podcast after she watches it.
But if you want to talk to me about this movie or anything in general, that's cool. You can do it on Blue Sky, Dark_Hue. Come to the Dark Hue Discord. If you want to support me, join my Patreon. I'm putting out a new thing. I think it's already out by now. Dead City Blues. I'm making a game with the patrons, essentially.
It looks fun. Look forward to it. So that we'll see you talk about some comics for a while. So we'll see you then.
I am the law.